Labour's disgusting behaviour with abandoning, first of all, they said they're not going to have a national inquiry into the rape gangs. Appalling, because I think it's the worst scandal in British history myself. And then they're going to water down even the little local inquiries they were going to have into 5 towns when children were being raped in 45 towns. So we've seen them doing that. There are these vast gaping wounds and scandals which really upset millions of normal people, but their views, the sort of, I guess, the kind of liberal elite, to use that term, when I've written in the past about the mainly Pakistani origin grooming gangs, that's racist. No, what's racist is them saying to the girls, we're going to fuck your white government and we're going to fuck your white girls.
Now, how disappointed are you looking at the rest of the mainstream? I mean, look, this piece, thank God, we don't really need the gatekeepers anymore because this has run wild all over social media, and so much of the public square now is centered on X.
And podcasts and
yeah, absolutely. But it still disappoints me on a daily basis that we don't have Robert Peston, Beth Rigby, Chris Mason asking the Prime Minister about the case of Lucy Connolly. So often with this particular government, I see the total change in focus from the people who are covering them. You know what it was like with Boris and Liz Truss. The tiniest controversy would be hammered day in, day out.
Piece of cake.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Whereas there does seem to be some sort of working in lockstep between the Westminster gatekeepers and this government. I mean, it took weeks, for example, for Rachel from Accounts to even be questioned about why she had lied about her own LinkedIn profile. And then it was only one time. Yeah. So how disappointed are you to see other mainstream journalists, I would say, totally ignore a story which is so clearly in the national interest?
I think since COVID and the behaviour of our trade during lockdown, to be honest, nothing surprises me.
You've lost faith.
I would watch those number 10 press briefings and I would wait for a journalist to ask a question. I think, ask a question. Just say, do we need to close the schools, Prime Minister? Nothing, Dan. So there was so little then. So I have had my faith very badly knocked in it. But I would say to you, I think that readers and subscribers, I think, are grateful when you, like we try to do, we try and show a different perspective. We try and say, I think what happens is that during my own police case, I'm in touch with a senior police officer who's been helping me. And he said, Alison, what you have to understand, he said, first of all, most chief constables now would rather screw up a mass murder inquiry than be called racist. That they police these things called protected characteristics. So there's a hierarchy of protected characteristics according to skin colour, religion, sexuality, okay? So if you're a white, straight British person, you're right, you're the bottom of the pile, all right? So they are policing with these other people in mind. So if you're Lucy and you're a white, law-abiding mum of a Tory councillor, you're not going to get any favours. So I think that what happens is that they attach the demonisation works really well because she became racist wife of Tory councillor. No decent person wants to be seen associated with defending someone who's said something horrible. So they put a kind of cordon around her, which means a lot of, people in the BBC or whatever. I mean, when my own police case was happening, because I'd posted a tweet a year earlier when 2 police officers turned up on Remembrance Sunday, and we talked about this on my doorstep. And I was invited onto various media outlets and did the BBC Radio 4 PM programme. And the host, Evan Davis, said to me, but what you tweeted wasn't very nice. And I said, I'm allowed to say things that aren't very nice, or things that you don't think are very nice, but which millions of people might think were fine. And I think what's happened now, and it is very, very prominent in Starmer's Stasi Britain, is people can think, that's not a very nice thing to say, but it's a free country, Dan.
Totally.
We're supposed to be able to say, people don't agree. Increasingly, people are worried about the consequences of uncontrolled immigration. It's probably the number one issue in the country, but there's a class of person that doesn't want it to be raised, because it's, as we've seen the last couple of days, Labour's disgusting behaviour with abandoning, first of all, they said they're not going to have a national inquiry into the rape gangs. Appalling, because I think it's the worst scandal in British history myself. And then they're going to water down even the little local inquiries they were going to have into 5 towns when children were being raped in 45 towns. So we've seen them doing that. There are these vast gaping wounds and scandals which really upset millions of normal people, but their views, the sort of, I guess, the kind of liberal elite, to to use that term, when I've written in the past about the mainly Pakistani origin grooming gangs, that's racist. No, what's racist is them saying to the girls, we're going to fuck your white government and we're going to fuck your white girls. That's racist, but it's the wrong kind of racism.
But you say the worst scandal in British history, yet we have a government, let's just be crude about it, that does not want to investigate because they are so terrified of losing the Muslim vote and being replaced by sectarian MPs. That is what this is about, isn't it?
Yes, I think that's mainly what it's about. I think it's also that, we've had Sammy Woodhouse, who's a notable survivor and campaigner, and Labour councillors, police officers, social workers. These people have gone on to promotion. Police officers where a girl got into a police station, escaped from her rapist, and then the sergeant handed her back. Why are these people not in jail? Why is Lucy Connolly in jail and the police sergeant who handed the multiply raped child back outside to her rapist, why is that person not in jail? So it's crazy, Dan. It's crazy. So there's huge. Labour knows that Labour local authorities are up to their necks in this scandal, right? And the minute, it's like a thread. The minute you start to pull that thread, it's going to go, isn't it? It's going to be.
So let's just pretend.
Let's pretend.
Let's just pretend.
Let's just say we're giving resources to Bradford so that Bradford Council can seek to investigate Bradford Council.
And cover the whole thing up.
I was saying to Sammy, I want people in jail. I want police in jail. I want the people who were in charge of making sure those children were protected. We need them to be in jail. But yes, coming back to your point, yes, there's absolute terror. Again, the senior police officer I spoke to said that, they're taught at the College of Policing, Islam is a religion of peace. Everything is to do with the huge terror that those people could make life very, very difficult, right? So let's appease them. This is what this is about. No, we won't have an inquiry. And also we might lose some more seats because, as we know, a number of very prominent Labour MPs, Wes Streeting, I think, has a majority of about 500.
I mean, at the moment, the polling shows him losing to a sectarian candidate.
Yes.
Not by a few points, Alison, by 18 points.
Yes.
Yvette Cooper would be thrust out. So they face losing their seat to sectarian Muslim politicians. As a result, they want to cover up the biggest scandal in British history, which I believe is becoming one of the biggest scandals in British history in itself, because as we know, so often the cover-up, I'm not saying in this case it's worse than the crime, because I don't think anything can be worse than the crime, but it's pretty damn disgusting.
It's absolutely extraordinary. If the suffering and horrific treatment of thousands of British children isn't the source for investigation, then what have we become as a nation? I mean, disgusting, really. I mean, no wonder people in America can't. We had a session here about the grooming gangs with, with two of the survivors. And
Sammy Woodhouse and
Samantha Smith.
Both brilliant women.
Brilliant women. And you could see people from around the world in the audience. They
can't believe it.
They can't believe it. And one guy...
This is Britain's shame.
And one guy, American guy, on the way out said to me, where were the Englishmen? Why were they not defending the girls? I thought, it's a good question.
Well, yes, but a lot of this comes back to, though, information control, doesn't it? Because how much did the Englishmen really know? And that's where the mainstream media, the deep state and their collaboration, or some would say corruption, is such a big part of this.
Because fear of being seen as racist. But just to come back to the police officer who, he said to me, not just about my case, he said, Alison, what you've got to realise is they want you to be afraid.
Yes.
It's a deliberate tactic.
And we are now.
Yeah, well, no, we're not, are we? We're not. We just think, I just think, if they bring in the Islamophobia thing, I'm going to be in jail anyway. So
you're like J.K. Rowling now?
I want you
lock me up.
Sending in the smoked salmon sandwiches, Wootton. I'm expecting a daily delivery of snacks to try and keep me going. But no, I think do you remember the Churchill quote about never appease the crocodile, thinking that because it might eat you last, but it's still going to eat you. So my prediction would be that these Muslim votes, Labour is desperately, shamelessly throwing. So it's votes for girls, isn't it? That's it. Votes for girls' bodies. Let's call it for what it is. So if you think about it,
white girls'
bodies, predominantly, although they did originally go after the Sikh little girls, and the Sikh men were out there with baseball bats, they weren't having it. But I think that the irony is that they will have ruined, Labour will have shamed the Labour Party by this appeasement to get these votes. And I think that what we will see is more this Muslim independence. Certainly, possibly by 2029, we could have an Islamic party. So they're not going to hang on to those voters anyway, because they're all going to. So the shameful selling out of Labour Party, which used to be for working class people, which is now prepared to sacrifice the children of working class people to hang on to a vote. And we are certainly not saying that all the people in this group agree with this behaviour. In fact, a point I always make is that there are Pakistani women and girls in our Pakistani origin women and girls in our country who are not getting the full freedoms that women and girls in our society deserve. They too are prisoners, right?
Well, of course.
Of that culture, of a misogynist culture. So we import people from a misogynist, backward region of Pakistan, we bring them into Western liberal society, and we seriously expect that they're not going to prey on female children. We must be mad, Dan.
But first, I never recommend anything unless I truly believe in it. And today I've got something game-changing for you. Have you ever stopped to think about how crucial comfort is down there? Well, let me tell you, today's Outspoken proudly sponsored by Sheath Underwear, the revolutionary brand shaking up men's comfort around the globe. And do you know what I love about Sheath? It was founded by a US Army veteran, Robert Patton, great man. And he thought all about this when he was serving in Iraq back in 2007. So this isn't just any underwear brand. Sheath was designed for the toughest conditions imaginable. Patton was battling relentless heat and discomfort in full combat gear, and he thought there has to be a better way, so he created it. And let's be honest, traditional underwear just doesn't cut it anymore. Sheath's innovative dual pouch design ensures your comfort all day long, keeping things separate, cool, and fresh. Imagine your essentials being comfortably cradled away from unwanted friction and heat. Trust me, it's genuinely transformative. I love Sheath. At the gym, on long days at work, even just relaxing at home. I'm telling you, once you've experienced Sheath underwear, there is simply no turning back. They're stylish, they're supportive, and they deliver unmatched comfort. It's like upgrading from economy to first class, but for your underwear. And right now, I'm offering you an exclusive 20% discount at www.sheath.com. That's SHEATH.com. That's 20% off your entire order when you use my special promo code Outspoken at checkout. So what are you waiting for? Sheath, by the way, perfect present. Are you looking for a last minute Father's Day gift? It really, really is good. And by the way, Sheath isn't just for blokes. Sheath is not just for blokes. You can see their incredible female versions as well. And you can see some of them modeled here as well when I show you the picture of Sheath as the first official underwear brand of the UFC. So you can click on the link below, visit sheath.com, make sure you enter Outspoken at checkout, and thank me later when you're feeling comfortable, confident, and ready to tackle anything the day throws at you. Sheath underwear, redefining comfort one pair at a time. But now, back to the show.
Exactly, and roll back some of those rights that should actually be God-given if you're
Yes.
born in the United
Born in the
Kingdom.
United
Let's be
Kingdom.
honest, lots of these young Muslim girls are. Yet we have Iqbal Muhammad, who's one of these sectarian MPs in Parliament, not just arguing for a runway on a Pakistani airport, but also suggesting that first cousin marriage should be legal in the United Kingdom. Can I just ask you about the raw politics of it at the moment? Because we've seen this split on the right between Reform UK and Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, who I'm sure you agree is a very brilliant man who has now raised £500,000 for his own rape gang inquiry, which Nigel did promise. He promised that he would do it and then decided against going through with it. Now, Sammy Woodhouse is going to sit on the expert panel. So's Esther McVeigh. I mean, this, I think, is going to be a big deal. What do you make of this seeming decision by Nigel to want to tack to the centre on these issues and also fall out so publicly with a guy who I think is quite clearly, or was quite clearly, Reform's best performing MP?
It's a can of worms, isn't it? Where I do agree with Nigel Farage is when he says it needs to be a statutory inquiry. All right. So I think.
So this will have no judicial powers.
So you're going to have to.
Can't compel people to give evidence.
You're going to have to be able to have an inquiry, a national inquiry, which will have the judicial power.
But Starmer is saying no.
But when Farage says if we don't have a statutory inquiry, it won't work. I mean, I wish the Rupert Lowe inquiry well, because I think anything which keeps attention on it is good. My own feeling is that it's such a festering. It's like one of those things in one of the Indiana Jones films. It's where some pullulating mass of evil has been kept under a tombstone, guarded by dodgy people. And then all it takes, it will explode down. It will.
You will only keep a lid on this for so long.
You can only keep a lid on it for so long. I hope in my lifetime we will see some justice for those children and a reckoning. But I think that I mean, with Lucy Connolly, one of the first people I reached out to for a quote on Lucy was Richard Tice, who's the Deputy Leader of Reform. Richard gave an absolutely no holds barred. Lucy Connolly is a political prisoner. Okay, very hard to get that quote from any of the other parties. So I'm wary. I'm more wary than you are. I want to see the right united and coming back to power in 2029. And
so does that mean a deal between Reform and the Conservatives?
Absolutely. I've got no doubt that will happen. Absolutely no doubt. And whether Kemi Badenoch is still the leader, which I think is really up in the air at the moment.
Have you been disappointed by her?
I've been giving her more of a chance. I think she's had a lackadaisical performance at Prime Minister's questions.
Awful.
I think all that too casual.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think, where's your rage? You've got this useless Prime Minister.
Because we've got enough of it, right?
It's like,
Kemi, take some of ours,
exactly.
okay?
Here we go. We'll send round a box of Dan's and Alison's rage. I feel that Starmer is a dreadful Prime Minister. I think that this business with the grooming gangs, I don't use the word evil lightly, but I think it is evil to appease people who have caused and who...
Do you think he's evil?
I think he's a moral black hole. I think he is an international human rights lawyer, socialist. And in fact, Ray Connolly, Lucy's husband, said to me he'd been in a cafe and there were lots of people who voted Labour and they said they're never going to vote Labour again. And they hate Starmer. He said, why do you hate Starmer? And they said, because he's not for the British. And that sums it up for me. You know he's not for the British. When he went to Southport, that absolutely heinous act, all he was concerned about was preserving his multicultural narrative. He scuttled off to a mosque that afternoon. Why is he doing that? What's the message?
And he has admitted that he prefers Davos to Westminster. So we have a globalist in charge. I would argue at a time when we desperately need the opposite, right?
Yeah.
When we have Trump
Yeah.
going forward with an America First policy, and yet we've got a guy who's fighting for a system which I think desperately needs to be dismantled and is about to be dismantled, whether he likes it or not.
And that's why all their, smash the gangs is just it's just rubbish, because we know that looking at other countries around Europe, Poland's just saying it's banning asylum seekers, right? We can see countries that if you seriously want to close your borders and protect your people, for me, the huge issue now with these hundreds of people a day coming ashore, as Lucy said, we don't know where they're from, we don't know whether they've committed crimes in their country. Those people are a potential threat to our women and children. They just are. Yeah. But it seems to be a price worth paying for Labour to, to keep its ideology
I just
going.
Think back to the fact that when Suella Braverman was Home Secretary, the mainstream media and the political class cared so much more that she had described the invasion of our southern border as an invasion. I mean, it quite clearly is an invasion. Just look at the numbers. These are terrorists, rapists and murderers who are entering our country on a daily basis. But the political class thought that it was much, much more important to police Suella Braverman's language than worry about the fact that we now effectively have an open border policy. I think it absolutely sums up everything.
Well, we saw recently actually one thing where Kemi Badenoch, Conservative leader, did well, because she was having an interview on the BBC with Laura Kuenssberg, who said, you've said some cultures are more valid than others. And Kemi said, yeah, child marriage. So we actually...
Are you going to argue for that, Laura Kuenssberg?
Well, we have a media class which actually thinks it's distasteful to suggest that some cultures are better than others. But we know quite clearly that they are, because given a choice between the Israeli men, women and children slaughtered on the 7th of October and Hamas, the people they won't call terrorists, mass murderers, whatever. But, so we see a kind of where the liberal sympathies lie, and they certainly don't lie with the Lucy Connollys of this world, do they?
No, and it will lead to the destruction of the United Kingdom.
Oh, let's hope not.
Well, if they continue down a particular path.
Well,
and obviously that's why we have to fight.
Yeah.
In all of our own ways.
Well, I'm
And that doesn't mean, by the way, fighting in a violent manner. I mean, you know me, I'm not a street protest type of guy.
No, you are not.
But
not unless you could be taken in a sedan chair with a Prosecco glass holder. Then Dan would be out there rioting.
But there are lots of ways to fight, right? And that's the point. And I think, thank God for you, because you are fighting within the mainstream media. I tried, I failed. But what I can do is now try and build up this independent media ecosystem.
Well, people are looking increasingly.
We need people in the mainstream media who are prepared to fight, who are prepared to put their neck on the line. And I knew the only person in the country who could change the discussion about Lucy Connolly was you. And even I didn't necessarily think one piece would have that level of impact. So thank you so much for that. Keep fighting, because we really need it. And actually, I think if there's one thing we've learned on this cruise, that the whole world is watching in horror. And I think it was Naomi Wolf who said, what's happened to the British? And actually, we know there are so many people who are watching silently in horror, and we have to give a voice to them.
They are, but it's not just internationally. I refuse to believe that the spirit of our people has been so cowed and destroyed that they, when shown what's happening, that they don't share our dismay and horror. I really think that the reaction to the Lucy piece, I knew that if I laid out what a patently decent person she was, that people would say, oh my God, why in our society is that lady, that nice lady, kind lady, doing in jail, and the fact that she's there as an example to silence others. And I think we have to say that's why as you know, Dan, I'm taking legal action against Essex Police, because we cannot let people turn up.
Totally.
And I think you'll remember that when the poor police officers who turned up at Alison's door.
I've never had such an earful, Alison.
Well, I think they were expecting to get a bit of overtime and pop round to Greg's for a steak slice. And of course they had this, and I just drew myself up to my full 5 feet 4 inches. And I said, do you know what we're commemorating today? I said, hundreds of thousands of young men, the age you are now, sacrificed their lives so that we wouldn't live under tyranny, that we could have free speech. What would they think of you coming round to a journalist's house? Well, you know.
So individual police officers need to ask more questions too.
Well, they need to be taught that free speech is a cornerstone of our democracy, and that punishing social media posts when they can't even arrest people for rape or for burglary or, you know, serious.
Which goes 90% unsolved in Essex.
Indeed, but most people and most of your viewers, subscribers, they want crime solved.
Please.
Not
non-crime hate incidents. Although, of course, yours wasn't.
No.
Yours was the step up, we're told.
I always think the fact you have invited the non-crime criminal onto your distinguished show is very nice. But that senior police officer I was telling you about, who is fighting, there are good people in the force. They don't want this nonsense. In fact, many of them have written and said, can you please fight? Because we have to get rid of this nonsense.
Well, I said the same thing to you, didn't I? And actually, we're here on the Mark Stein cruise. I'm inspired by him as well. I mean, number one, he's brought all of these amazing people together, which is such an exciting thing. But look at his fight versus the off-communists.
Yes.
Actually, it's at a huge personal toll to himself.
Yes. Well, it does.
But sometimes we have to do it.
We do, and it does take its toll. But the police officer said to me when he started, he said, we used to police crimes that had actually happened. Now we're supposed to be policing crimes that might happen. It is George Orwell. It is mad, but we can fight, and also we can laugh. I think they haven't made laughing illegal yet. Well, no, surely there will soon be a crime for finding Keir Starmer ridiculous. That's got to happen.
Well, Allison Pearson, thank God we have you.
Well, thank God for you, Danielle, as well.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.